Start.
The following program is a Creative Magic Network production. You're listening to What's Your Excuse with Max Ivy, known around the world as the Blind Blogger. People often say, if Max can do it, then why can't I? Here's Max Ivy.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. This is Max Ivy, the Blind Blogger, and you're listening to What's Your Excuse with me and my good friend Frederick By. And today I'm actually calling you from New York City. I'm in the middle of my crazy solo adventure to the big city, as we've been calling it online, and thought I would check in with Frederick and with all of you out there and give you a little glimpse into what I've been up to since I've been here, and maybe talk about some of the things I want to do before I leave. So that's what we're going to do this week. Hopefully we'll make up for the fact that we didn't do a show last week because we had some technical difficulties on the train. So let's get to it. How are you doing today, Frederick?
I am doing fabulous. I had a wonderful holiday. It was pretty, well, it still is the holidays, but, you know, Christmas was very, relaxed. You know, we chilled a lot, and it was really, really fun. And like you said, Max, last week, I think we're going to catch up for what happened last week. But, it wasn't your fault. You were on the train. You were on the road, actually. And now I'm excited to hear what's up. Like, where are you at? What are you doing? And as we said before we went on the air, you like to tell stories. And I think you have a lot of great stories in your back pocket, so to speak. So, so talk to us a little bit about the trip so far. Because last week you talked about it a little bit. But, so where are you at right now? What are you doing? What are your plans? And how has it been so far?
Okay, well, right now I'm calling you from the apartment that I am staying at through Airbnb with my host, Mark Suarez. I believe that's how I have trouble saying his last name. But I'm hanging out here at the apartment because after I finish talking with you, I've got a couple other interviews today. And then I'm going to be headed out to Central Park, where I'm going to meet up with one of our earlier guests, Ryan Badolf, who's known as the Blogger from Paradise. He's one of the guys I follow online, and a guy who I consider a hero because he's able to travel to all those amazing places in the South Pacific, Caribbean, etc. And he does it, and he's still making a living doing it. And he's one of those people who was a voice of encouragement when a lot of people around me were saying, Max, you're out of your mind, and are you sure there's somebody who can go with you? And as a professional friend of mine said, you had a lot of people projecting their fears onto you, and at that time, so having Ryan's voice in my ear was good. And so I'm excited about getting to meet him. We're going to go hang out in Central Park this afternoon. Unfortunately,
talk to us a little bit about that, what you just said, the negative voices. Because I think a lot of people would like to do things, and those negative voices, which oftentimes are friends or family or people close to you, they kind of project, as you said, their fears on you. So talk to us a little bit about that. And how did you overcome it? Or how did you, hey, man, screw you guys. I'm doing it anyway.
Well, sometimes I just had to go into my room and close the door and basically dare anybody to come into my room who had a negative opinion. But that doesn't cover it all because, you still have to be online. If you do what me and you do for a living, you can't escape Facebook or Twitter or your email list or people who have your email address because you've given it to them and you want them to contact you. So I was surprised by the number of people, some of whom have in the past talked about how I inspired them, and then some of these people turn right around and talk as if you can't do this or you shouldn't do it. One of the best things that happened to me actually had to do with my nephew. My nephew Seth a month ago was saying that the only way I could go was if he went with me. But in the last week before I left, I needed to go to the Apple store. I needed to go to a couple of doctor's places. I had to go take care of some of the usual junk business you have to before you leave town. And I spent more time with him, and he spent more time with me. And when I left, by the time I left, his opinion had gone from "there's no way I can do it if I don't take him with me" to "I want to go just because it would be fun to be with you as you do this." So that right there was a good thing for me to see that transformation as somebody, that lives in the same house as I do was helpful. But a lot of it was just continuing to believe that that the Lord or the universe, depending on who you believe in, wouldn't have even put the competition in front of me where I would apply for it, and wouldn't have allowed me to win it if there wasn't going to be a solution to make this work out. And as you know, one of the things that also helps me a lot is I'm really good at turning strangers into friends. I'm really good at asking people for help, for asking for stuff. So, I have always felt like, okay, it's scary. I don't exactly know how this is all going to work out, but I know that it will some way, somehow. And that's what I had to keep going back to in my own head. And I had to remember that if at least for this short time, if somebody is not supporting me, then they don't get to have a voice. If somebody that's in my online community or that I meet in person, if they're starting to get negative at a time where I don't need that in my head, then you have to limit the amount of time that you're exposed to them. You have to. I didn't have to actually unfriend anybody or block anybody on social media, but we did have some pretty heated conversations in my own house. I have people at my church who were and are still a little nervous about me leaving. Funny thing that happened to me just before I loaded up to get on the train is one of my friends from church actually said, Max, it would make us feel more comfortable if you would let me send you a Find My Friends request, so at least I would know where your phone is. To which I made a joke about it though. I said, well, I guess that's okay. I said, I don't mind that. I said, I'm just glad somebody isn't trying to go Mutual of Omaha Wild Kingdom and put one of them tracking chips in me like they put in dogs and cats nowadays. And the funny thing was they didn't think that was funny. They thought that might actually be a good idea. So that right there should show you the kind of stuff I'm up against being a blind person taking off on this trip by myself. And like you say, a lot of people, when you start to do something big, something different, something that the people around you don't know you for and don't expect from you, you can easily become like the only person that believes in it. And so, you really have to be sure. You have to know down to the bottom of your feet that it's something you have to do. You have to have that passion and that curiosity. And then you really need to go out and find at least one new friend who will understand what you're doing, because they don't know you for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. They don't have this expectation of you as the C student or the screw up or the hothead or whatever label you want to use for somebody. If you go out and make a new friend, then they don't have as many preconceived notions about what you're capable of, and they're might be more likely to support you in this new thing you're up to.
How can we all relate to that? It's crazy.
Yeah. I've commented about this, how aggravated it's been being a blind person who's having all these people tell me that this thing is too big for me because I'm blind, and I complain about that, and then I hear from sighted people who are like, Max, it has nothing to do with your vision. It has to do with the fact that you're trying to do something that's outside of what the people around you see as something you're capable of doing. That's all it comes down to. And like you say, when it comes to writing a book or recording an album or deciding you're going to do a film or even deciding you're going to start a blog, you're going to have people who, hey, that's not the person we grew up with or the person I've known for 20 years. And so it's scary to them, and they just don't see you that way. It all comes down to the perception and the idea they have in their heads of you. And so quite frankly, when people start a new project, they do feel alone, because in a lot of cases they are quite alone.
Yeah. And I can see that. And you're right. All right. So what did you learn about yourself so far? In your trip. I mean,
Well, I learned one thing on Tuesday of last week, and that is while I am in pretty good health compared to where I started 5 or 6 years ago.
How so?
That I am not in good enough shape to do the kind of walking and climbing and all that stuff that they do here in New York City every day. So on Tuesday we went downtown. My host's roommate Kurt, he took me downtown because he had a rare day off for work. So we went to Times Square. We walked around and went to Madame Tussauds. Well, we didn't go into any of these places because they're very expensive, and I'm on a budget. So, but we hung out in front of Ripley's and in front of Madame Tussauds. We stopped in front of a I Love New York stand. We ate a couple of places. We went into Macy's because he told me that eventually it's going to get what they call New York cold here, and that I needed a hooded sweatshirt and a pair of gloves and a hat. So we had to go do some shopping. And the funny thing was I didn't find out that we were out shopping in Macy's on Christmas Eve until we were leaving. Somebody said something that reminded me that the 24th is Christmas Eve. And I'm like, if my friends find out I was in a major department store on Christmas Eve, I'll never hear the end of this stuff. Because in my family, we believe that on Black Friday, on Christmas Eve, the safe place to be is in front of is on your couch or in your chair watching the craziness on TV. That's the way we believe in it. So,
really,
but I enjoyed the shopping. I kind of surprised my guide because we went up and down escalators, and I think I rode about 10 or 12 escalators before we finally got out of Macy's.
Wow.
Yeah, and I posted a slideshow of the photos that he took of me that day. It was kind of funny. It was as if he was the tourist and I was the local, because he was taking all the pictures. But we walked block after block. We took the subway, which is the first time I've ever ridden the subway, and the other thing I found out
the subway. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was it? How was it, man?
Well, it's just a really noisy train that runs underground instead of above ground. Is near as I can figure.
And it's packed. I can imagine because we have the subway here in Montreal, but in New York, I can just imagine how packed it is because it's packed here. But I can imagine New York, man. How many was there? Was there a lot of people with you? I mean, around you?
There was a lot of people in some places, and then there was places where it was like empty canyons. And what Kurt told me is that since we went out on Saturday on Christmas Eve, in New York, there's a lot of commuters. The really, the most crowded times on the subways are during the week, during the hours people are going to and from work. So since we didn't go out on Friday, we went out on Saturday. We missed a lot of that, but there were still crowds in the terminals. There were still crowds in the stores, but there were a lot of places on the sidewalks that were just wide open. Like I say, it would vary. There would be places that would feel like you were in a sea of people, and there would be places that felt like you were in a big Walmart parking lot or something, and nobody around you. It's just
wow.
Yeah, and the one thing I have noticed since I've been here is the people I've met have all been really friendly. They've all been really helpful. I've only seen or heard one really negative thing, and I've been here since Tuesday. So today is Thursday, so I've been here over a week now. No, wait a minute, I left Tuesday, got on Thursday. Okay, so today is a week. The only really negative thing I've seen out of New Yorkers so far is yesterday I was taking a train, and there was a guy walking up and down the cars begging, panhandling.
Okay.
I don't know if he had a sign or not, but I could hear walking back and forth asking people for money for a bottle of water or money for other things, and I could tell by the reaction of the people around me that this was not somebody who really needed money.
Oh, how so? Why?
there's just the people around me. They shrunk back into their seats. They, I could feel the people next to me as they kind of scrunched up. So I was like, yeah, they just don't want this guy to even think that they might give him money. That's the impression I got, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I've been sharing some of my writing with some of the people in my circle to get their opinions as I'm writing it. And a couple of people have mentioned that I am not doing a good enough job telling people how I am experiencing New York. So thanks for asking that question, because now I can think about that's one example right there. That's a good example of how I was able to tell what was going on around me by just my other senses. Because if you're on a crowded train, the people around you can feel them when they move.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good question.
Yeah, you're saying that you're writing now. What are you writing? Because you touched on it a little bit last week, but elaborate a little bit, because I think go ahead.
Come on, Frederick. That's the way you ask your questions. Don't try to shorten yourself or whatever. Don't censor yourself, my friend. Okay, don't do that. I do it enough for both of us. Trust me. But yeah, when I won the Amtrak Writer in Residence, which is how I got to New York City, I thought, this whole process from even back before I applied for the competition has been a metaphor for being open to opportunities and taking chances and just seeing where the story will take you. And the applying for it, even when I thought that the past winners looked more prestigious than I was at the moment I applied. Deciding to go to New York City when I won, instead of playing it safe and going to maybe Los Angeles or Phoenix or South Carolina where I've got family. I think there's going to be a lot of lessons in this trip for people, and I'm trying to concentrate more on the motivational side of it than the travel side of it. But there's going to be a little bit of both. I don't have a name for the book yet, but people are starting to come around to the idea that a book based on this Amtrak experience would be a very motivational book for people to read. And, as you say, I'm a good storyteller, so I think it would be entertaining too. Yeah. I just need to come up with a good title and a good cover art so we can get people to actually want to buy the story once it's out. The other thing that I found interesting is through a mutual friend of ours, Alex Sikorji, I've been in contact with a couple of filmmakers. They're small, they're not huge people, but they've both said that if I had had the time to plan this in advance, that this would have made a hell of a documentary.
That's true.
So I recently talked to a woman who's a publicist in California, and she was like, Max, if you take good enough notes and keep track of your conversations and who you talk to and write the story, you could always go back next year and film the movie. I'm like, cool, I like that idea. So I'm, going to do my best to write a good book, and we'll see what happens. Yeah. People continue to say if Max can do stuff like that, then what is my excuse? And I think the idea of me coming to New York City by myself and just seeing what happens while I'm here. Will I visit as many of the attractions by myself as I would if I had had a guide with me? Probably not. But I feel like, since I'm not in a huge hurry to check off all the usual tourist boxes in New York City, since I'm basically going to do what I can do and be happy with it, enjoy it, I think that I'm having more fun, and I think I will. I won't be one of those people when I get home that I'll need a vacation. That's how I feel about it. Yeah. So we'll see. Later today, like I say, I'm headed over to Central Park. On my way, I'm going to go pick up a ticket. At least I'm hoping to pick up a ticket, because I'm having some trouble with one of my credit cards to where I can't call them. I'm hoping to pick up a ticket to go see Wicked tomorrow night, so I can, say that I've been to at least one Broadway show while I was here. Mm-hmm. Yesterday I did a television interview. It won't go live until February, but when it does, it'll be live on all the cable stations here in New York City, and hopefully be picked up by some other folks. So that's something I can cross off my list that wouldn't have been on most people's lists coming to New York. Mm-hmm. I wanted to try going to the Lighthouse for the Blind while I was here, but they're closed until after I leave. They're, as a lot of nonprofit organizations do, they take off longer for holidays because it makes it easier to keep and retain volunteers. But they're closed, or I would have liked to have done that. Yesterday I went and rode the ferry and to Staten Island. I took the train over there and rode the ferry, and then came back by train and bus. And I did that I didn't have a guide with me, but I found guides all the way along the way until I was back here at the apartment. So that was an enjoyable experience to, realize that basically I just have to keep asking, and eventually somebody will walk up and let me take their shoulder to the next spot on the route to or from wherever it is I'm trying to get to, which is great because just like everything else in this city, taxis and even Uber are not cheap. Huh. So, it's nice knowing, like I said, yesterday I left the TV station. I took the number one train to the Staten Island, the ferry in terminal. I took the ferry across to Staten Island. I hung out over there a while, and then I came back and I took the R train to the J Street station. Then I took the Fulton bus back to the apartment on Gates Avenue, and then somebody on the bus helped me across the street. So, it's a great experience because it reminds you that there are people who will help people if you ask, and if you look like you really do need their help, because I'm sure you've seen those people places that, are they're asking for help, they're begging, but they're not really helping themselves. So people generally avoid that. But I had a great day yesterday, and I only went two places. I went to the TV station and the ferry, and I had a great day. I really feel like I accomplished something. And when I sat down early this morning to write about it, I ended up with about 2,500 words. It'll probably end up being 3 or 4 chapters in the book. So
awesome! Wow.
I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling really good. And like I said, today I'm going to the park. Tomorrow I'm going to go to a Broadway play, and that's another example. I was looking at reading through the listings of what's playing right now, and there were some things that would have been easier or that would be easier to get a ticket to. But I decided, Max, why don't you go to where you would really like to go to? And I've never been to a performance of Wicked, but I've heard some of the music from it, and of the shows that are showing, it's the one I would really like to go to. So I'm going to be headed over. On my way to the park, I'm going to stop at the Gershwin Theater and get me a ticket.
Awesome. All right, once again, you're listening to What's Your Excuse with Max Ivy. He's talking about his trip in NYC. That's take two, because last week, we had some internet connection problems, and I am Frederick Bai. And guys, right before continuing this conversation, if you have a passion, something that fuels your curiosity, on top of getting fascinating interviews straight to your inbox, when you subscribe to our free Creative Magic community, you will get super cool exclusive gifts in return, like the happiness quotes by the ambassador of happiness herself, Maura Sweeney, one of our hosts. She's an amazing person. So you can subscribe for free at frederickbai.com. That's Frederick with a C, Bai like bye-bye.com. Hey, Max, you talk about your TV interview. What is it about? Where can the people find it once it's published? When will it air? You said in February. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, it's for a show called The Coaching Game. It's hosted by Lori Lawson. It will air through the Time Warner channels in the New York City area on Valentine's Day, February 14th. And I was given a DVD of the interview, which I was told I have permission to upload to my YouTube channel and share to people. And I was also given a link to her YouTube channel where the video can be seen now. So if you want me to, as soon as we are through here, I will send you the link to the interview, and you can post it as part of this interview's show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool.
She said, when you start telling people you did a TV interview, they're probably going to want to see it, and they're probably not going to want to wait until February to see it. So she said they go ahead and broadcast these things on cable on their schedule, even though they also put them on YouTube and post them other places. So, it's not Good Morning America or the Today Show, but it's a beginning. It's the first time I've ever done a TV interview. Actually was in a TV studio at the Manhattan News Network building in New York City. Can't forget that part of it. And actually had them, put a microphone on me and have to run the cord up through my clothes, kind of thing that people have to do when they're on TV. They work, they're not a big frills thing. So there was no green room. There was no stylist or makeup person, but I had a great talk with Lori. We talked about coaching and just about life in general. And we talked about how I learned a lot about myself when I spent the week before I left without a working computer, that it forced me to use my iPhone more and find ways that I could use it that I wasn't, because my laptop had become a crutch for me. And a lot of people have things that are very comfortable. They're used to doing them. They are familiar with them, but they're not helping them anymore. And so we got into a good conversation about that. She was impressed. She said, "I thought you were going to say that not having the keyboard had made you insane." And I said, well, 2 years or so before I had to have the same keyboard replaced, and I went without a computer for a week. And at that time, I didn't have an iPhone or another option, and I was not a nice person to be around.
Okay. Well, I think it's a lot of people like that, because these, our computers are very important to us.
Yeah, they are. But there's other things besides computers. If somebody looks at their day-to-day life, they'll find stuff they do that they do because they've always done it or because they've done it for years now. And it's no longer serving them as far as trying to get to that next goal or dream that they have in mind for themselves. And
yeah, especially navigating Facebook, especially that, and posting always on Facebook, I think. I think that's good. I'm staying. One of the guys I'm staying with, he is a phenomenon because he does not own a social media account. He works as a purchasing manager for a restaurant and a private social club that has a restaurant and nightclub and some workout facilities here in New York. And he signed a confidentiality agreement, so I promise not to mention the name of the place. But he doesn't have Facebook or Twitter or any of that. He has a phone, and people can text him or call him, but that's it. And I mean, to meet somebody who doesn't have a Facebook account is like, man, I wish that could be me. Yeah.
I wish I didn't have to feed those social media animals. I really do. And interestingly enough, he's the second person that I've met while I've been here who doesn't do social media. I was having breakfast yesterday morning or day before. No, day before I was having breakfast waiting on my interview, and I talked to a guy who's a supervisor of those big cranes that they use to do construction around the city. And I asked him for his email address so that I could let him know about the book when it came out. And he's like, email address? He said, I wish my staff was around to hear you ask that question because they would have got a huge laugh out of this. And I'm like, what do you mean? He says, I don't even have an account. He said, I'm not on social media. I'm not on Twitter. He said, people can't email me. He said, I've got an old phone, so I don't even like them to text me. And I'm like, yeah, you're my hero, man,
Wow.
That's two people in the same week. And, now that I think about that, that reminds me of something else. People told me that a lot of people in New York, they have a reputation of not being nice people here. But as soon as I got here, I've noticed that, people have been real friendly, and it's been explained to me that they generally try to be friendly, but they try even harder if they can tell that it's people from out of town, because they realize that tourism is a big part of the economy around here. And so if they feel like if they notice that you're not from here, then you get a lot better. You get their better game. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead.
But I'm sitting in the restaurant having breakfast, and I'm talking to this guy, and he gets up and leaves, and I say goodbye to him, and I'm like trying to remember how to spell his name so I can write it down for later. And the waitress comes over and goes, "Hey, that guy who just left, he just paid for your breakfast." I'm like,
wow,
"Hey,
that's pretty cool."
I've heard about this paying it forward thing, but I've never actually been somewhere where it happened, much less have it happen to me. And then to have it happen to me in New York, just a few blocks from Times Square, that was pretty impressive for me. And that's really surprising. I've mentioned it to a few of my friends in emails, and their response is, "Max, knowing you the way we know you, there shouldn't be any surprise that somebody would want to buy your breakfast."
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But, I think it comes down to also, like, big cities like New York or even Montreal or, Toronto. These cities are used to have, like, people from out of town. They're more receptive and accepted, how can I say, receptive, yeah, to tourists and people from out of town than, let's say, Louisville, Kentucky, for example. Like, I love Louisville. I went there, was there a year and a half, but they're more used to it. They're more used to people. So no, it doesn't surprise me actually that you feel this, welcome. Just you feel welcomed, basically.
Yeah, and the first day I was here, I met a real estate agent, and she was talking to me in the coffee shop where I was waiting to go to the apartment, and she was telling me, this would be a great city for somebody like you. And I'm like, I'm just here for a visit, y'all. Don't go trying to convince me to change, to relocate, But until I started realizing, the way the transportation system works here in this town, I was like, from what I've heard, this wouldn't be a bad city to live in if you're a blind person, because it's supposed to be really easy to get around. However, I've kind of gone back and forth on that in just the last 48 hours, because a couple of days ago, my take was, yeah, there's a lot of transportation options in the city, but getting to and from the starting and ending points is not easy unless you have a regular guide or a dog, or, you travel the same route every day, and you can get somebody from one of the agencies to help you figure out exactly, what your landmarks are and how many steps are involved and how many stairs are involved and all that stuff. But then, so I'm like, my strategy had changed on Tuesday morning. My strategy was going to be, I'll take a taxi to the train station, and then once I get off at the other end, if I can't find somebody to lead me, then I'll take a taxi on the other end. That was what I was thinking, because our first day here, we left the apartment, we got on a bus. The bus was supposed to take us to the A train. No, it took us to another bus. And you had to cross like would amount to like 3 streets where I'm from to get to the stop where you would get your transfer for the next bus. And the transfer, when I used to ride buses in Houston, you'd go to the driver and you'd go, "Okay, I need a transfer," and you'd give him a dime or a quarter, he'd give you a piece of paper. Well, nowadays everything is electronic. You use these cards to pay for your transportation, so you have to get your card to work this electronic vending machine to get your transfer to the next bus. So we had to take a bus to the train. And thankfully that day I had a guide with me. Kurt, my roommate, was with me that day. And then we get on the train. When you go to the train stations, these, they're subways, they are underground. So you're looking at going down and then back up several flights of actual stairs. And most of these stairs are kind of old, so my foot doesn't really fit on them. I have to take them, instead of stepping 1 foot up and then taking your next foot up to the step above that one, the way you would normally climb stairs, I have to go actually one step at a time. Have both feet on the same step before I go to the next one.
Wow.
So so the first day I was actually out and experiencing their transit system, I was kind of I was a little bit depressed. Not really depressed, but I was like I've like, well, the transportation system is supposed to give you all this freedom in New York City, but as a blind person, you really can't take advantage of that without somebody else's help.
Okay,
which just goes back to prove the old lesson, which is there's no such thing as independence. It's only people who can grasp the value of interdependence that can be really successful in life. So, but then like I was telling you about my trip yesterday or day before now, because yesterday. Yeah, I'm going to. It's a good thing writing some of this stuff down because my grasp of time isn't as good as it was, or will be once I get back home again. The fact that so many people I didn't know, just people I found along the way, were willing to get me from one point to the next along the route to somewhere, makes me feel like that if I did want to live here, I could, and I would have no trouble getting around because. Eventually you would get to where the stuff you use on a regular basis, you start to figure out exactly where some of that stuff is. The one part that is kind of really difficult, in my opinion, for somebody who has as little vision as I do, is once you're down in those stations, the trains generate a lot of noise, and you're not always able to hear what's around you or to hear announcements, or to even be able to clearly hear where the train that you're waiting on is stopping, because that actually happened to me. I was waiting on a train and was following a woman. I was going to get on the train, and another train came into the station at the same time. So for a couple of minutes, I can't hear nothing. I am blind and deaf for a couple of minutes. As a result, instead of taking the next step and ending up inside the train car, I did a 180-degree turn and ended up back out on the platform.
Wow.
So I had to wait for the next train to get where I wanted to go to. But that was just, just the bad timing, that when the train that I was wanting to get on was stopped, another train just happened to be rolling into the same terminal. Mm-hmm. And for a while, I've got no way of knowing where I'm at. And somehow I got turned around. But I think that if I were going to live here on a regular basis, that some of the places you go to, you would get familiar with how to get to them. For example, the area where I'm staying is mostly residential, so I believe I could figure out the streets and the sidewalk to get from where the bus lets you off to the front of the apartment. Those kind of things I think I could figure out eventually. But like I say, I've gone back and forth on this in the last couple of days, and I think when I go home, it'll be interesting to see what I think about it. The best thing, I guess, is that there are all these options for getting around, because where I live in Houston, I live in Conroe, which is about 50 minutes outside of downtown Houston. And we have no transportation options in Conroe. We don't have what they call a paratransit company, which is one of those companies that will let people who have a disability call them up and take them places. Mm-hmm. We just recently got a bus company. It has 5 stops on it, and none of them are near my house. If you want to go to Houston, you have to do what's called a park and ride. So you have to have a car at least to get to the point where the bus would start to head into Houston. Now, if I lived in Houston, there's lots of bus routes and even light rail in the the more metropolitan part of the city, but not where I live. So,
okay,
I would say that here would be better, but I don't think I see myself moving here anytime soon. Just like I told the guy on the train, I decided to try a vegetarian hamburger, which is something I'd never had before. And when I was through, he asked me how I liked it. I said, it wasn't bad, but don't plan on me giving up meat anytime soon.
Yeah. Hey, we got a few minutes left. So we'll wrap this up. But all right. So what are your plans? When are you coming back? When are you going back to Houston and to Texas? And what? So just tell us that.
Okay, I leave on January 3rd, which is Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I make it back to Houston on the 5th, which is Thursday. I am taking a different route back. I'm going by way of Chicago, and then I'm going to come through North Texas instead of going through Louisiana. So it'd be a little bit different route back. And of course, the scenery won't change for me, but maybe I should meet some different people and it'll be different staff. As far as the rest of the time I'm here, I'm basically open to suggestions. I'm going to try to do some of the usual tourist stuff. And, I don't really have a plan, which might make some of our listeners cringe that I don't have a list of where I'm going to go and when each day. But, for now, I've got a couple more interviews I'm going to do today. And I'm going to go hang out with Ryan and just see how the rest of the day goes.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I've got a fear. I have this fear of heights, so I'm trying to talk myself into going to the Empire State Building or the 9/11 building, one or the other.
Okay.
I don't know that I can take both, but 100 plus floors up if I can make it there,
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
And then once I get back home, it'll be time for us to do another show. So if there's anybody listening who has a story of transformation or overcoming obstacles and adversity in their own life, and they'd like to come on and talk with us and share that with our listeners, they can go over to frederickby.com, and there should be a link over there as far as how to become a guest, or if you want to be a host and have your own show, we got a link for that too.
Absolutely.
And we've also got the Creative Magic Store, where you can find copies of my books, Leading You Out of the Darkness into the Light, A Blind Man's Inspirational Guide to Success, and where I share my life experiences and some of the lessons along the way, along with 11 actionable exercises and email support. And then the other book is It's Not the Cookie, It's the Bag, an easy-to-follow guide to weight loss success, where I talk about what I learned before, during, and after having gastric surgery. And I had hoped we were going to have the audio version of the first book up by now, but I'm working on it. And and when this next book is ready, the Creative Magic Store will be the first place that y'all will be able to check it out. So
awesome.
Bookmark the website. Come back to it often, because it's not just me and Frederick. When quite often when guests come on our show, they decide to list some of their items in the store. So bookmark it and come back over there often.
Yeah, and also we'd like to thank those who pledged to our Patreon page. You are helpful to the show, and we are grateful for your help. In case you're wondering, Patreon is a simple way for you to contribute to the network and podcast every single month and get super cool exclusive rewards in return. You'll love the perks, I promise. You can. Our Patreon page is at frederickby.com, Frederick with a C, buylikebabai.com, and click Patreon in the header. The money you can contribute for as low as $1 little, so that's pretty cool. And also for all you Amazon shoppers, when you use our Amazon link at frederickby.com, and Amazon kicks back a few dollars to the show. It helps cover production costs. No additional cost to you, no hidden fees, no nothing. So if you like what you hear, frederickby.com, click the Amazon link in the sidebar for all your online shopping and bookmark it, find it easier. And guys, it's time for us to ride off into the sunset right here, right now. Live with purpose, passion, and love. Right, Max?
Yep.
All right.
And y'all have a great weekend.
Awesome. All right. Bye-bye, guys.
You've been listening to What's Your Excuse with Max Ivy, known around the world as the Blind Blogger. For more information, you can go to theblindblogger.net or frederickby.com. That's Frederick with a C, by like bye-bye.com.